I hear water running. Oh, okay, it stopped. Okay. Morning, Lisa.
Good morning. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, good morning, Antonio.
All right, good morning.
And David.
Okay, we are ready to go whenever you are.
Thank you, Melissa. All right, I think it's about 9 o'clock. Yes, it is. All right. Well, welcome everyone to the regular board meeting of Tuesday, January 22nd, 2021 at 9 a.m. And let me see, Melissa, would you please do the roll call?
Okay, Director Balin,
Here.
Director Boatwright,
Here.
Director Kearns,
Here.
Director Murphy,
Here.
Director Ringen.
Here.
Okay, all 5 directors are present.
Okay, thank you, Melissa. And so at this time, if we have members of the public that would like to speak, we would like to welcome the members of the public who have taken the time to attend this meeting and provide comments on matters related to district business. Any member of the public may address the board relating to any matter within the board's jurisdiction. This need not be related to any item on the agenda. However, the board cannot act on an item unless it was noticed on the agenda. Persons speaking during the public comment will be limited to 5 minutes, or depending on the number of persons wishing to speak, it may be reduced to allow all members of the public the opportunity to address the board. And I just realized, if you just heard me pause, I need to back up because I skipped over the Pledge of Allegiance. So please forgive me. I'm just anxious to go through the meeting in an orderly way. And so let's back up before the public forum and let's do the pledge. So again, I apologize. And Corey, could we have the flag, please? Okay, thank you. And if you all could mute, then I'll recite the pledge for us all. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great. Okay, again, I'm kind of out of order. So we'll go back to the public forum. And Corey, is there any public that wishes to speak?
Not that I'm seeing at this moment, no.
Okay, well, in any case, we'd like to welcome some of the members or all the members of the public that have that are watching, and feel free to then comment on any agenda item that we have. So with that, we'll close the public forum. And Melissa, would you please read the consent calendar?
Okay, item number 1, minutes of the regular board meeting of June 8th, 2021. Item number 2, resolution to approve appropriations limit for fiscal year 2022. Item number 3, operational update on the water and wastewater department for May 2021.
Thank you. Is there any director that would like to pull one of those items? Yes, Director Ringen.
Item 3, please.
Okay.
And I would like to pull item 2.
Okay. Any other items? Okay. Then I'm looking for maybe a motion to for the minutes, to approve the minutes.
I'll make that motion to approve the minutes of the June 8th meeting.
I'll second that.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Melissa, the call, please. The vote.
Okay, Director Balin,
Aye.
Director Boatwright,
Aye.
Director Kearns,
Aye.
Director Murphy,
Aye.
Director Regan?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 5-0.
Okay, thank you. If you don't mind, we'll take them in order. So if it's okay with you, Director Ring, and I'll start with Director Boatright for item 2.
That's fine. That's great.
Okay,
Madam President, I'd just like a discussion on this and general information on the item.
okay. Is Steve here?
Yep. Good morning, board members. Steve Sheffield, your finance director, Director Boatright, as well as Director Murphy. This item's really a housekeeping item. It's a state requirement once a year. State law requires each local government agency to determine the appropriations limit subject to Article 13B of the California Constitution applicable during the following year. There's a specific calculation in there. This really applies to all government agencies, but really only comes into play for cities and counties and school districts who have a significant portion of their revenue coming from property tax. Essentially, the calculation sets a limit based on the amount of property tax you have, and it's associated with a growth factor. And in the calculation, it comes up with establishing this limit. Well, as you can see in the attachment, our property tax is generally between, over the years, 800,000 and 1.2 million, and the calculated limit is 3.9 million. So there's really no ramifications of this. If those two numbers were close, then there can be some appropriations limitations that you would have to enforce and enact. But it is a required calculation. It's required to be noticed to the public at least 15 days, which it has been on our website for an excess of 15 days, and requires a board approval, adopting a resolution specifically for the appropriation limit each fiscal year. And that's what this is. The district has never had any limitations on its appropriations, again, due to the small nature of property tax in relation to the total revenues that we collect.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. And just to clarify, Steve, and thank you for the explanation. When we're getting a little bit more money, I see, and so that reflects that population change, which was just a little bit of growth. Am I reading that correctly?
Well, really, the growth factor is directly related to the limitation calculation. The actual property tax revenues are more driven by the county assessor's office and their calculations, which ties into, the housing market, how many homes that sold, and do that. This calculation is kind of separate from that. And we talked about that as far as our budgeted property tax revenue. This is really specifically, they used to call it a GAN limit. I don't know if anybody remembers GANN. The GAN limit was Prop 13 that came out, and that's where this originated from.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any further questions on that item? Okay, Director Boatright, would you like to make a motion?
I would make a motion that we adopt item number 2 on the consent calendar.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Melissa?
Okay, Director Balin,
Aye.
Director Boatright,
Aye.
Director Kearns,
Aye.
Director Murphy,
Aye.
Director Ringen.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. Okay, Director Ringen, item 3, please.
Okay, well, first of all, I want to thank the staff for once again putting together a really good ops report. I find those very, very helpful and interesting, and it never ceases to amaze me how much is accomplished in just a month by the crews. So but I do have a couple of questions. Some of them are related, and I'll try and get through this really quick because I know we got a lot to do. The first three are kind of related. Just wondering how the sewer flushing and camera progress is coming along. Are we got that pretty much under control? That's number one. And then I noticed that we had 5 SSOs, and all of them were due to tree root intrusion. Is this basically because we're in this drought and it's real dry and the trees are searching everywhere they can find for some sort of moisture? And then well, let's leave it at those two first, and then I have one more that has to do with sewer also.
So Ron, this is Director Ring, and this is Rich Pitcher, Collection Superintendent. And if I'm understanding you correctly for the first question, which is the camera inspections, we have camera approximately 95% of our entire system. And we hired the outside contractor to do that a few years back. But if you're also speaking to just the monthly 2% follow-up that we're doing to keep track of our flushing, yeah, we are completely up to date on that.
Great.
Does that answer your question, or?
Yeah. That camera process was kind of expensive, and it was something that was forced on us, but as it turns out, it was a good thing. But glad to see it going in the rearview mirror.
Yeah, so you're right, it was forced on us, but it turns out it was a really, really good thing. We found a lot of issues that we weren't able to discover by doing it in-house. So yeah, that was a great thing. And
then the 5 SSOs, they were all tree root intrusion. Is this because of the drought, or is this just the way the cookie crumbled this month?
Yeah, so the drought, obviously, it doesn't help when there's not a lot of moisture in the ground. It's going to search for it. And with a lot of our older pipe in the system, the clay pipe, which is susceptible to cracks and all that, the roots are going to find their way in to the moisture. We do a good job. We try and do a lot of preemptive maintenance, routing and flushing and all that. And then we also try to follow up with some root treatment as well.
Okay, great. Then the next three are also related, but they have to do with water. And I guess I was looking at the figures for where the reservoirs are, Lyons and Pinecrest, and it looks like Lyons is going to be right down at the bare bones minimum. And so I got two questions that have to do with that. Will it being that level, that low, is this going to run our treatment operators into a problem with taste, odor, and treatment issues? And along with that, as hot and dry as it's been, if this is the way the whole summer's going to be, I'm going to be hating life. But will we be able to get PG&E to release water out of Pinecrest prior to Labor Day if we start getting into real trouble at Lyons? I mean, I was looking at the other thing about the snow water equivalent. 0% snow, 0% snow water equivalent. Yikes.
Yeah, so Director Ringen, for those ones, I'd like to defer the taste and odor question to Trevor Cowden. And then for that second part, the PG&E, I see Glenn's online. He would probably be better suited to answer that question.
Okay, thanks.
You're on mute, Trevor.
Okay, my first rodeo. Thanks, Jeff. And yeah, so Director Ringen, taste and odors. We do take care of it in the treatment process as best we can. So it does prove a challenge in a drier year. But with our treatment standards, we really attack it the best way we can. Sonora has already seen that this year with some turnover in the Phoenix Lake. Fortunately, we're catching it a little bit early, and it was a short taste and odor event. So we want to stay on top of that and make sure we do everything we can to attack that.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, this is Glenn Nunley, Senior Engineer. I can step up and address your other question, Ron. So the reservoir levels, we're watching carefully. PG&E has predicted Pinecrest to fall to around 5607, and that's in elevation feet. We typically refer to that in feet. And so it looks like, based on what I'm seeing, it's going to be in that range, maybe 5607 to 5608. Built into that is PG&E had requested or had presented as part of the drawdown curve process that TUD may need to draft water from Pinecrest prior to Labor Day. So right now we're seeing Lions dropping between the 1,500 and maybe 1,200 acre feet this year. And we will have the ability to draft and keep Lions above those levels. So, and it's something that we want to monitor, especially the water quality, if we drop down below that 1,500 foot level. And right now it's could be a hot, dry summer. Our demands are pretty stable right now. So kind of steady as she blows sort of thing.
All right, thank you. I'm glad to hear that we will be able to get additional water if we need it.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. Any member of the public wish to comment on this item?
Not that I'm seeing at the moment, no.
Thank you, Corey. Okay, with that, if there's no further discussion on that item, Ron, would you like to make a motion?
Yes, I would move to approve or accept the ops report.
Okay, and I just realized this is for information only, but since we go ahead and approve these as consent calendar, we'll go ahead and I'll ask for a second.
I'll second.
Thank you, Director Kearns. Melissa, would you please call the vote?
Okay, Director Balin,
Aye.
Director Boatright,
Aye.
Director Kearns,
Aye.
Director Murphy,
Aye.
Director Ringen.
Yes,
Okay, motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. And I just want to say as an aside, I really like the report, especially I think it was the CIP section where there were a couple of items that were completed. And I appreciate that. You know, it's really helpful just to see, yep, we got her done. So thank you very much on that. Okay, we'll move on to the regular business. And Melissa, would you please read the first item?
Okay, item number 4, public hearing regarding adoption of the 2020 Urban Water Management Plan and Water Shortage Contingency Plan.
Okay, board and board president, thank you, Ms. Balin. Glenn Nunley, senior engineer. We have here the public hearing to adopt the urban water management plan and the water shortage contingency plan. So can we open the public hearing?
If there's no further comment from the directors, let's do that. Okay, Corey?
We do have John Buckley with his hand up.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Barb, before I start, could you please clarify whether this is a 3-minute or 5-minute comment opportunity?
How about 5, John?
Thank you. Okay, so ready to start. So John Buckley, CSER, I was out of state during the previous opportunity to comment on the urban water management plan. And despite all the money and the impressive display of information that's in this to date, I'm urging the board not to approve this at the hearing today, but to correct flaws first. The key flaw that is most important is that it is wildly exaggerated and inflated when it comes to water use growth rates that are in stark contrast to facts and reality. Example one, TUD treated water growth rate is projected to skyrocket over coming years due to system acquisition connections that Gary Yeager and Tom Seja and others predicted many years back would happen. In fact, the truth is that not a single system acquisition connection has been actually added in the last 14 years based on the plan. Example two, treated water use is projected to soar from 2,562 acre feet for single family connections last year to an amazing 4,555 acre feet in just 5 years. An incredible jump of nearly double all the water use growth that has taken place in the last 25 years, all to suddenly happen by 2025. There is no basis in reality for any such a wild leap in water use demand. In fact, TUD has added an average of 29 connections a year. It's in the plan if you look for the past 14 years. The plan bizarrely predicts 10 times that number of new connections every year for the next 5 years. Makes no sense. Example three, the real actual number of single family connections last year was almost exactly the same way back in 2010. But page 2.5 of the plan claims that TUD will have a skyrocketing projected growth rate going from 11,800 single family connections last year to more than 13,100 in 4 more years from now, 2025. There hasn't been that number of new connections in total over the last 17 years, but the plan falsely predicts a sudden skyrocketing of the number of new connections. Key factual points the plan totally ignores are that despite all the misinformation about water demand shared at FERC licensing meetings or other matters, the truth is the plan shows total TUD treated water use in recent years is only 70% or so of what TUD water demand was 15 years ago. Instead of water use spiraling up, treated water demand by TUD customers is greatly reduced, and similarly, raw water, historic water use back in 2005 through 2009 was higher than any recent years of raw water use. So any claim that water use is substantially rising is not correct. This final point is the one that I hope holds your attention long after this meeting has ended. The plan on page 220 makes it very clear that last year, similar to all years of record, that TUD ended up with 55% of TUD's combined treated and raw water lost and unaccounted for due to leaks, breaks, inaccurate meters, water use and operations, reservoir tank overflows, unauthorized connections, ditch losses, and other water never reaching a TUD customers. 700 acre feet of treated water is lost, something no board member wants, compared to 3,800 acre feet reaching a customer. So 20% of treated water is lost or unaccounted for, but more staggeringly, 8,460 acre feet of raw water is shown as unaccounted system loss, with only 3,000 feet of raw non-recycled water reaching a customer. More than half of all the water TUD controls never reaches a customer, far worse than what TUD has admitted at past sessions. The Urban Water Management Plan does reveal some significant disclosures about water loss, but due to wildly inflated future water demand projections, I'm urging this board to hold off on any action on it today, allow time for there to be some realistic and credible corrections, and then to return and approve it with it being more credible and valid. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Any other public comments?
Not that I'm seeing, no.
Thank you. Then I will bring it back to the board for discussion. Any board member wish to discuss this item? Okay. Oh, yes, Director Murphy.
I just have a question on one of the things that John Buckley brought up, and that is when we're looking at a number of users going up, is part of that because we're expecting people who are on wells to be switching over to being on the system? I'm just wondering because I know in the last drought period that we had, we did have some folks switching over, wells going dry, and people needing to do some of that. So I was wondering if that's part of what's in there.
Thank you. Glenn?
Yeah, Director Murphy. So the growth predictions that are listed here are based primarily on the growth memo that's included in the appendix of the urban plan. So that growth memo was developed back in 2017, 2018 as part of the looking at the consolidation work. And so we very carefully looked at the growth by system acquisition and general growth from the county. So we're looking at the county growth at, I think it was like 0.61%, and the growth within the TUD system is about 0.84. And then on top of that, we have a number of systems that we anticipate would fall into the TUD system over the next 20 years. So those are assumptions that are made from a planning standpoint. Now, to your question, does it specifically look at well failures? No, not specifically. However, I think we have looked at the number. There's some number of wells that are in the county, and there would be some number of connections that would fall into that place. The plan, as John had pointed out, it appears to have more growth and would be able to absorb those particular connections from well failures. And these growths are the predictions of the future based on assumptions. So that's how the plan is laid out. I think.
Yes, Director Ringen.
So I guess my question to staff, most likely this will fall on Glenn Nunley's shoulders. The figures that Mr. Buckley threw out, how accurate are they?
The treated water system I had spoke earlier and estimated while on the meeting at 13%. The treated water is around 19% from a loss standpoint. However, the new standards for that undergo through the American Water Works Association. There's a water loss audit process, and the water boards and the water agencies look at the water loss in like a sort of a system loss a different way. They're not necessarily looking at it from a percent standpoint. So the TUD will fall under Senate Bill 555 that will require system losses be reduced based on some yet to be determined criteria as we unfold through the next 5 or 6 years. And so, yeah, all systems are going to have system loss, and we know we have losses in the treated water system and leaking pipes and in the treatment process, and those are being addressed as we step through the years in the CIP and other processes. So yeah, I think the treated water system is more about 19%.
So that is not the figure that we've heard in the past, but so be it. If that's what it is, that's what it is. I just wonder, TUD did not put those pipes in the ground. We inherited it basically from PG&E through the county. So with that being said, and nobody wants their rates to go up, I wonder if Mr. Buckley and CSRC are going to step up to the plate and donate the money to replace all those 100-year-old pipes that are leaking. The other thing that I wanted to bring up was I think some of the growth potential that's in that report, or whatever you want to call it, has to do with possible acquisitions of other small, other small water systems in the county. And we're not planning on it from what I understand, but we need to sort of plan on it because the state is looking for consolidation and they will force TUD to take it. And so I think we need to make darn sure that that is in the back of our heads so that we don't get caught short, because any small system that either wants us to take them over or that the state tells us we have to take them over is not going to be in good shape. So it's going to be a big money loss right out the gate.
So yeah, thanks, Ron. I want to stop here briefly. I know I needed to get this comment in at some point here. As of this morning, we have not received any public comment, written public comment to the urban plan and the water shortage plan as of this time. So that we need to officially say that. Additionally, we have reached out specifically to Tuolumne County and to the city of Sonora. And I spoke briefly with Rochelle about the plan, and both agencies do not have any public comment for the urban plan. So I wanted to make sure to get that out there for the record. The system acquisition, we've lived it quite a bit. We have a big list that's actually included in the growth memo that does identify all of these smaller systems that could potentially or may have the potential for being acquired by TUD over the years. And so when I came on board at TUD, I know that we went through the process of acquiring the Big Hill system, for example, that took a major upgrade and was absorbed into TUD by a state receivership, if I'm not mistaken. And then there's been other systems that have come online. We're simply predicting the future, and we can only make assumptions of what might occur. And the assumptions were made that we would absorb all of these systems sort of evenly throughout the next 20 years. Will that happen in the next 5 years? Probably not, but that's part of the plan. This is not something that actually happens. It's just the prediction, and that's how the assumptions are made. And additionally to that, some of the systems that we would assume acquired as part of the growth, they're already wholesale customers. So they're already using the water that we're drafting from the river. We would acquire them, but there's no change in the demand on the supply side from a lot of that acquisition. So it's just a plan for the future and to be ready in the event that we need to acquire those small systems. A lot of them aren't ready, and they may not want to. Perfectly fine. The status quo works, but if we're planning for it, then we're ready for it.
We have Director Boatwright with a comment, then Director Kearns, and then Director Murphy.
Thank you.
Glenn, you actually partially answered the question as to the systems that we may acquire in the future. How many of them are already raw water customers? So I think that's already been answered. Thank you.
All right, Director Kearns.
Okay, yeah, I just got a couple comments here. As far as water loss goes, there's really two kinds of water loss we're talking about. The treated loss that Glenn mentioned, 19%. That's what we lose in our pipelines and in our distribution system. The other loss that Mr. Buckley, I think, was speaking about is the ditch loss, the raw water loss. And that's quite high. I mean, I'll agree with him on that, but that's the nature of the system. When you got ditches, it is. And the only way to fix that I know of is to pipe it. And I don't, there's been other boards that went down that road, and I'm certainly not willing to go down it today. But until there's an appetite, not only on the customer side, but on the board side to solve that problem, it's probably not going to happen. As far as the growth goes, again, you got two different kinds of growth. We've got the growth that Director Ringen and Glenn were talking about, which is the acquisition growth. But the population growth of Tuolumne County never seems to change. I've lived here all my life, and it seems like we're always right around 50 to 55,000 people here in Tuolumne County, and it just never seems to go above or below those two numbers. And so I take Mr. Buckley's point on that. But the acquisition is an issue that we need to plan for, just like what Director Murphy brought up about the wells coming online, and any other acquisitions of any systems that are still out there. There's not as many as there used to be, but there still are some, and they may come knocking on our door at some point in time. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Director Murphy.
Yeah, just two questions, and one of them, and Director Kearns may have just kind of answered this, but my question is just in the raw water system. I would love a little education on where most of that water is lost, if it is seepage, evaporation, or if it's just because the pressure running down, we need to have so much water in the ditch at a time. It doesn't, and that water isn't collected it just kind of flows by, and kind of where that water goes, if it ends up back in kind of the natural resources, or what happens with it. Because that's the piece I'm a little fuzzy on, to know when we're talking about that water loss, if it is, what that means. And then the other question I had, when you're talking about additional users, the thing that came to mind for me of a large thing that I know that's on the horizons is the hotel and resort that Chicken Ranch has, I think is planning for. I think it's already through the planning stages. Things like that, are those on, will that be on the TUD system in the future? And is that, where does that, large things like that, how much of an effect does that have on the system? Thank you.
Okay, I'll address the first one. So the total water loss from a water supply standpoint, I look at the draft from the river, from PG&E at what they call the Tuolumne Main Canal, right at Lyons Reservoir. Now, so we need to account for what's taking place from there to customers. So you have water loss that's occurring in the main canal, and we look at an annual figures, what's taking place the year round. So water loss in the main canal, water loss in Power Creek, that comes from the powerhouse to Phoenix Reservoir, and then water loss that occurs in Phoenix Reservoir, and also spills that come from Phoenix Reservoir into Sullivan Creek. And so that whole system there is completely outside of any TD influence. And some preliminary numbers is roughly in the 23-24% of that flow to start off with. So by the time you anyway, that's one chunk, and then the next chunk comes from the raw water losses that occur in the TUD ditches. And so some of the components there, where does that water go? So you're going to have seepage and evaporation, and then there's some what we call in loss or kind of return flow. So the ditches are flowing. They need to be set at a flow rate that'll get water to the end customer. And so in order for that to happen, you may have some loss that's spilling out the end of the ditch. During a year like this, once you've reached a steady state, steady flow, I like to say, you've kind of slowly gotten all of the water balance happening, and the ditches are flowing at a clean, fairly controlled level, where spills at spill gates and spills at the end are set to a minimum. And then now you're going to have some fluctuation in losses that occur with temperature and humidity and evapotranspiration and that sort of thing that's occurring in the environment. And so, and there's some other components that can be looked at on that respect too. And so that's taking place. Now, I think the other thing too, is we're looking at, this is from an annual basis. So when you're in a storm events or you're during the winter, a lot of times, for example, the main canal is bumped up in flow well beyond the TUD demand. So they may be at what we call floating snow. So you want to keep the snow flowing so it doesn't actually block and plug up the main canal. Those water losses are called water amounts, then are spilled purposely off. And so you have much more water kind of flowing, taking place in the environment happening there. And the same kind of thing that occurs in the ditches, probably on a little smaller level, but you have spill gates that are opened up. And that's really how the system was designed back in the 1800s, to have these spills. If you don't spill, you're going to overwhelm the ditches and have blowouts, which we have documentation of therein. So, but once you get into sort of a critical time like right now, we're at really more of the sort of the lower compared to spilling, because you have storm events, you may not have as much loss from just spilling. So now we're dealing with just more environmental effects. And there's a lot to it. Hopefully that helps answer your question.
That was great. Thank you. Okay. And then the second question was the Chicken Ranch Casino and Resort that's being built up. That will be on TUD water. Is that correct?
Maybe Eric, I think he may have a little more information on that. We do serve the Chicken Ranch now with a treated water line, so they are a customer. And this expansion, I think Eric can talk to better than I could at this point.
Director Murphy, yeah, the tribe just released their draft tribal EIR in regards to that particular project. And the comment period closed, I want to say early June. The district did submit comments in their draft environmental document. They indicated that the new hotel casino would actually be served from a non-described other water project that will be on, likely involve New Melones, but there were very little details provided. So our letter back to the tribe basically said, we understand that you're moving forward with another water project. If that changes, or if the phasing of the project requires TUD to serve you water, we need to know early on in this process, because right now we are not forecasting providing any additional water to what we currently already serve to their offices out in Chicken Ranch.
All right, thank you very much for clarifying that.
You're welcome.
Any further board comments?
I have one for Glenn. Glenn, during the winter months, when our spills are opened up to control stormwater, does that water also count against us as a loss? Is there actual meters on the spills for the ditches?
Yes. So we look at a water balance. So we meter the water flowing at the head of the ditch, and then we do that for a period of time, and then we add up all of the water that makes it to a customer or a water treatment plant or some other known water delivery. And then we take the difference. And so, and that changes throughout the year. So if we have higher flows to float snow in one of the ditches, for example, yes, you're going to have a much higher inflow balanced against sort of a normal draw or take from the ditch, and that would indicate a higher ditch loss based on that scenario.
All right, thank you.
Director Murphy.
Again, this is just for my understanding. At those spill gates, the different places where the water goes out of the system, does that go into natural creeks and things like that, or is it just basins that then seep into the ground or something?
So the spill gates are normally located at a some kind of natural drainage, and so Eric Hall may be able to describe this a little differently. But when the drainage itself is fairly large, when we might expect some pretty high flows at a particular drainage, we look to either have a chute flume and shoot that drainage over the ditch, so the ditch doesn't actually absorb it, because that's more of a problem when that happens. And then, or in some cases, the drainage is, excuse me, large enough that there may be a flume. The ditch itself is suspended over the drainage, but in general, the spill gates would be located to spill and drop into a particular drainage, and so then it goes naturally from that point.
And so it gets added back into the environmental flows that are out there.
Right.
Thank you. Okay, well, if there's no further comments or questions, whoops, then if we're ready, I'll call for a vote. Is there a motion?
Director Balin, you need to close the public hearing.
Oh, thank you very much. Okay, so at this time, I will close the public hearing and return to the board for a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the urban water management plan and water shortage contingency plan.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Okay, any further discussion on that? It's been moved and seconded. Seeing none, then Melissa, would you please call for the vote?
Okay, Director Balin,
Aye.
Director Boatright,
Aye.
Director Kearns,
Aye.
Director Murphy,
Aye.
Director Regan.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes 5-0.
Thank you, Melissa. And I thought that's a really good discussion on the water. And I think the county's probably, the ditch system's probably the biggest stormwater diverter that we have in this county. It's just volumes and volumes return back actually into the South Fork via the Shaw's Flat Ditch, then into Slum Dam, and then into Mormon Creek, and then it goes into the South Fork again. So it's pretty awesome. Okay, Melissa, would you please read the next item?
Okay, item number 5, consider approval of the fiscal year 2021-2022 operating budget and capital improvement plan.
Hey, good morning, President Baling and board members. This is Don Perkins, your interim general manager. And before I kick this over to Steve and the gang to present, I wanted to quickly mention that the CIP planning is really a year-long endeavor. In fact, it's an ever-evolving document, always changing to meet the current new needs, challenges, and opportunities. And I can tell you, this is usually an exciting time for us. We're anticipating the next new fiscal year. We're busy trying to close out fiscal year 21. We're eagerly anxious to get started with fiscal year 22. So we're really pleased and happy to present this for you. So I'll let Steve take over. Thank you.
Thank you, Don.
Oh, good morning, directors. Steve Sheffield again here. This item, you notice we got a lot of folks on here, the superintendents, and Don kind of led us in this, but we've provided you essentially kind of a two-part presentation. Just as a reminder that there was a special board meeting was held on June 3rd, 2021 for introduction and discussion of each of these items. The two categories we're bringing to the board today are actually the fiscal year 22 CIP budget, as well as the fiscal year 22 operating budget. When we met on June 3rd, one of the requests that the board had was a status update of the fiscal year 21 CIP projects. So in your board packet, that was put together, and I'm gonna let Eric and Matt Nolte, our distribution superintendent, kind of lead off there, talk about the status of the current year as the board had requested, and then they can talk about the CIP, and then we'll circle back to the main budget, which also includes that. So with that, I'll hand it off to Eric.
Thanks for the segue, Steve. The good thing about having all these folks on the call today is that if there are any questions by the board, we have all the superintendents here that have intimate knowledge of the specific projects. So don't hesitate to ask any questions, but I'll be very brief. As Steve mentioned, on June 3rd, the board had a desire to hear a status report on how well we've performed in the last year. We prepared that. I believe it's on page 33 of your agenda package. It's color coded to kind of help you identify projects that have been completed. President Balin already expressed a desire to hear that, and obviously we like completed projects as well. Projects that have been or are in progress have been deferred, or in some cases we actually cancel projects just because we resolved the issue in another way, or what seemed like it was an urgent need turns out not to be as bad. When we do condition assessments and things like that, it helps educate us on the urgency of some of these capital projects. So, you know, of the 22 water fund projects that we had in this year's CIP, 17 have been completed or are in progress. In progress is a bit loose. You could ask, well, did you just start it? Are you close to finishing it? The reality is, because our fiscal year starts in the smack dab in the center of the construction season, you're going to see the term in progress quite a bit, because very few projects are started in like early spring, late winter and get completed by June 30th. I mean, when you consider invoicing and other things, most projects are going to span over multiple fiscal years. There are also some larger projects that are phased. So of the 22 water fund projects, 17 have been completed or are in progress. 4 are being deferred. Some of those deferrals are because they were utility relocations related to a county project and the county didn't move forward with the project. There is a project related to a development and the development hasn't moved forward. We also added 2 capital projects, one being the Phoenix Dam and spillway rehabilitation, and we've added others. So on the sewer fund side, it's very similar. We had 22, coincidentally, sewer fund projects in this capital year. 19 have been completed or are in progress. 1 was deferred and 2 were canceled. That gives you the bigger picture of how we've performed. On average, it's about 75% of the projects are completed or in progress. In dollars, Steve sends out a monthly CIP progress report. And when we look at the end of May, the district spent about $8.6 million in CIP this year. I'm proud to say 4.2 million or so, about half was grant funded. So that's pretty good. In terms of our overall budget, that's about 60% by the end of May has been spent. There are invoices still trickling in, and we have placed quite a few orders in the past month or so. So that the board will get the true picture of how the CIP ended when Steve evaluates the financials at the end of this fiscal year. Other than that, I think, we're happy to highlight, some success stories, or just to really open it up to the board for questions. As I said, Matt is here. He can speak to detail or pass off to the respective superintendents who can certainly answer your questions.
Thank you, Eric. I really appreciate how prepared you guys are, and I'm really glad that everybody's here. It gives everybody a chance to answer questions and and be live on Zoom. So it's great. Thanks for being here. All right. With that, any comments from the directors?
We do have Director Boatwright with his hand up, and then Matt Nolte with a comment afterwards, and then Director Balin.
Yeah, the question, President Balin, is it appropriate to ask questions about specific CIP projects that are listed?
Yes.
Okay. My two questions then relate to wastewater projects, specifically the Melville lift station and the study for the Twinehart wastewater treatment plant. Question for Melville, has the largest CIP project for the collection side, is there increased connection fees to that with the associated increases on the system demand from current projects that are underway?
And Director Boatwright, just for clarity too, I didn't make it clear, but we're giving you, the board, a status report on the current fiscal year. And then we have a very brief introduction to what will be next year's CIP. The project specifically, the two projects you've listed were, well, let's talk about Twinehart to begin with. That is, or was on this fiscal year, and it just didn't, it got started, but we really haven't been able to get a consultant on board. So that will really fall into if the board wants to, budget for that in the next fiscal year. In terms of Millvilla and capacity fees, if that's your question, the standard capacity fee that would be paid for our wastewater system is universal for the entire system, but it has a lift station adder fee attached to that. So if a development has to flow through 2 or 3 lift stations in order to get to the wastewater plant, they get assessed an additional lift station adder charge depending on the number of lift stations. So there would certainly be an additional charge for anyone flowing through Millvilla. But those capacity fees, are somewhat separate from the Millvilla project, because the improvements to that site are needed regardless of if, say, Valley Vista or any other development occurs. They are reliability and condition issues down there that we need to address regardless. Hopefully that answers your question.
All right. Yeah, thank you. The concern for the Twinehart wastewater treatment plant is to make sure that, since this is a feasibility or a process study up there, that, to ensure that we go after SRF funds to fund that, and then also have a open request for proposals on that. All right, thank you.
All right, then we have Matt and Director Balin right afterwards.
Hi, good morning. Matt Nolte, Distribution Superintendent. We staff thought this might be a good time to point out a few notable projects. that we accomplished this past construction season. So on both the water side and the sewer, we were very productive. In the water, there was approximately 8,500 linear feet of main line that was installed. We were able to take out 3 tanks that were in poor condition, and we consolidated 2 hydrodynamic pump stations. The Zelinsky Tank and Pump Station Consolidation Project. This project, we took out one of those tanks and one of the hydro systems. We installed approximately 2,300 feet of main line and replaced the other booster pump system in that zone with a new state-of-the-art constant pressure system and auto start standby generator. That project was completed by an on-call contractor. The Riddle Tank and Pump Station Consolidation. Within the scope of this project, we eliminated another tank and hydro system by constructing an intertie with Miwok Mutual Water Company. There was approximately 350 feet of main line, a new pressure reducing station, and strategically located controlling valves, along with a master meter and master meter agreement. It eliminated potential water outages from power disruptions for 7 customers, and it increased the fire flow in the newly established pressure zone. The Crystal Falls Techite pipeline replacement. This was the first phase of 3 phases and replaced 2,000 linear feet of main line, starting at the Crystal Falls treatment plant and ending at the Comstock plant or tank, excuse me. This pipeline segment is the primary transmission line from the Crystal Falls water treatment plant. And when we had breaks, it would impact a large amount of downstream customers, and it almost always resulted in thousands of gallons of water loss. On the sewer side, we also completed some notable capital projects worth mentioning, and I think I'd like to defer this over to Rich Pitcher, the collection superintendent, so he can highlight some of those projects for you guys. And when he's done, I think we're going to open it up for discussion if you guys got any questions. Thank you.
Hello, directors. This is Rich Pitcher again. Along with the water side, we did do a lot of projects. A couple were outside contractors, but a lot of these projects were completed with our in-house construction maintenance department. We started a lot of sewer lift stations, but the main one that we completed is Apple Valley Sewer Lift Station. And some of you are aware that in the past that lift station in heavy winter storms has actually gone underwater, and we've lost generators, pumps, we've lost a fence out there. So this was a really good project to complete. The construction maintenance department came in and they brought in a lot of fill to actually raise that station a few feet. We put in the past, we only had one sump out there. We didn't have an overflow sump. So we installed a new sump and used the old sump for overflow. We installed a new block building, purchased a new generator, installed 2 new pumps, and we actually paved the access road, because in the past we weren't able to access that station with our large truck. So that's going to be a really good thing in the winter for the vacuum trucks and the flush trucks and all that to get down there. And then we're putting a new fence in for security. So that was the main station that I wanted to identify. So if you have any other questions.
That's great. That's great updates. It's a lot of work. That's a lot of pipe. That's a lot of water that's getting saved. Thank you. I have a quick question regarding on the sewer fund. I don't really recall the board. This is the feasibility study for eliminating the Twain Harte wastewater treatment plant. I don't know if that would be the correct way to characterize that. I know the board reviewed it and we looked at opportunities to maybe repurpose that or something. So my question to staff is, if you use the word eliminate, that's not cast in concrete, because this is just sort of a placeholder, or because we may want to repurpose it for fire flow and wildlife benefits?
Director Bellin, thank you for that clarification. Yes, that was the initial title. We dubbed it a couple of years ago, and it may not be appropriate today. I think you suggested to us that we bring this, before we do anything, bring it to the wastewater committee in the near future and see where the wastewater committee would like us to go with this. So I think we'll take you up on your advice.
Okay, thank you. I'm just a little sensitive to project drift, as the board actually turns over, and then so suddenly then something kind of shows up, and it's difficult to trace its genesis. Okay, thank you for that. No further questions from me. And any other questions before I open it up to the public or comments? Yes, Director Kearns.
I was just giving thumbs up. I thought those were great presentations. Thank you.
Okay, so Corey, is there any public comment?
Not that I'm seeing at the moment, no.
Okay, thank you. Then I'll close the public comment portion and bring it back to the board. And let me see. This is okay.
President Balin, this is Eric.
Yes.
So we just reviewed for you our performance this past year, and we're happy to just very briefly address the next year's CIP if you would like. Otherwise, I'm also equally happy, or if not greater, to let Steve go ahead and jump into the financials, because we do know that the CIP is a plan that without the budget, it really doesn't mean a whole lot. So it's the board's pleasure, whatever you'd like to do.
Oh yeah, let's take a look at that part too.
Okay. As far as the next year's CIP, the board has already seen it on June 3rd. But in a big picture, we generally budget $5 million a year for water fund improvements and $2 million a year for sewer fund improvements. That's been fairly consistent. This year's a bit of an outlier on the wastewater fund. On the water side, we're at about $5.5 million. So we're pretty consistent there. We also haven't had a rate increase. This past year, we did not have a rate increase. So we're holding steady to that $5 million. On the wastewater side, we have $2.2 million in wastewater fund improvements. But then if you add, funds associated with the regional proposed Sonora Regional Wastewater Treatment Plant project, the district's contribution, we're at $7.7 million approximately. So that just gives you a rough idea of where we're at. Certainly the budget speaks to where the funds would come from in terms of the revenues and whatnot. So I'm happy to pass it over to Steve if that's acceptable to the board as far as, enough information on the CIP.
Good. I'll go ahead and jump back in for everyone. A little bit different animal, because we did ask about the status of the project. So we kind of diverted from our normal course of action, which is looking at adopting the overall budget for fiscal year 22. As I said before, we had our special board meeting on June 3rd for the introduction discussion. I should point out here that the numbers that are included, that are presented to you today, have not changed since that meeting. We went through that meeting, we said that was our best work, our best point in time recommended budget. Now, obviously, since then, the world continues to change. We saw what happened with the bid opening. We know fuel prices are going up, electricity is going up, materials, insurance costs. There's a whole lot of unforeseen things going on right now, but I still believe what was presented to the board on June 3rd and what we're presenting today is really our best point in time. And, from my perspective, serving as your finance director, this is a plan. This is our best, most accurate, most realistic plan we can have opening up our new fiscal year, July 1st. Can it change? Of course, things can change tomorrow. We already know of some changes. And that's part of the reason we have the quarterly budget to actual report for the board. You know, there may be this year, we may need to amend this budget. But right now, I still feel confident that all these talented people you see today have done their due diligence. We've really, you know, gone down to the fine tooth, just like we presented you here. And what I showed you on June 3rd was really a recap, which is still in this document. It's titled Budget Recap, page 21, and that hasn't changed from what you've seen before. But what you have here is the 33-page, really formal document, if you will. Just to segue into that, I think under discussion on your memorandum, I think it's worth saying out loud that TUD is a public governmental agency, and the draft budget organizes the functions of the district in a typical public sector format. And it includes detailed schedules that display various components of the district's budget and financial data to provide in-depth information and transparency about how the district expends its funds. Revenue and expenditure schedules are followed by descriptions that outline the revenue or expenditure type. A budget recap schedule displays the entire district budget at a glance, and individual departmental operating budgets break down expense categories to functional areas and include a personnel summary defining the departments and divisions within which the various personnel of the district are assigned. So, you know, essentially we've had the discussion. You have this before you today. We're asking that the board consider adopting by motion the resolutions approving the fiscal year 22 capital improvement plan update, as well as the fiscal year 22 operating budget. And I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Steve. Are there any questions for Steve or the rest of staff? No questions from the board. Okay. Then we'll open it up to public comment. Corey?
No, I don't see anybody indicating comment at the moment.
Thank you. Then I'll close the public comment, and I'll just say I really liked the way it was broken out with the in progress, completed. That was very, very helpful. I know it took some time, but it was really appreciated. It's good. Thank you. Well, with that, then, are we ready to make a motion?
I'll make them.
Hey, I'm sorry about that, Jeff. Madam President, the adoption of the capital improvement plan, extremely important, but my reservations lie in, like I said, the Twain-Hart wastewater treatment plant, making sure that the district, goes after potential available grant funds for funding that, instead of just customer-based, funding source. Question would be, do we have the ability, if general budget and CIP budget are approved, do we have the capability of guiding or requesting that in the future, or is that just funded from our general fund at that point?
We do have Steve with his hand up.
So Director Boatwright, and for all the directors, a good question, a point of, I guess, clarification here. From a financial standpoint, that total CIP number is what you see in the operating budget. The budget itself does not have the detail, does not say how much is grant funded, where it is. Now, as we discussed on June 3rd, this budget does show a shortage or a planned financing for water. And in the past, I know last year we had the same question come up. What is planned financing? Well, every day we're trying to find grants. And as Eric pointed out, we're pretty good at finding some grants. You know, we found it quite a bit this year. We usually do, but planned financing could be a grant we didn't expect. It could be a way to, you know, a project gets delayed due to permitting or whatever. We have to go out and get a loan or whatever. So really the way we look at this is that you're approving a budget with a total amount going to CIP. Now, throughout the year, as long as we stay within that amount, then we may end up doing a budget transfer. This project might come first, this project might not, but this information is always provided to the board, and the board always has the ability to change a particular project or whatever. But from a financial standpoint, as long as we're staying within this adopted total of the, you know, like Eric said, 5.5 million for water, then we're okay, even though one project may go another. Now, if we determine that this particular project will send us over the total CIP budget, we would be required to come back to the board and ask for a formal budget amendment. So really, to clarify from a finance perspective, we're asking the board to adopt a budget for fiscal year 22 that totals that amount. You know, not necessarily those projects are hardwired, only these projects, only this amount or whatever. That's our plan right now, but our goal really is to stay within that total CIP budget, if that helps.
All right, thank you.
Good question, Director Boatright. Thanks for the explanation, Steve. That's good. I think in the past, boards have gotten a little bit nervous about being excluded in some things, but I hear what you're saying about you go back to the board. Maybe we got a grant for something we expected to pay CIP for, and then that would release funds for something else. So it's a whole picture. Any further questions, Director Boatright?
Not at this time.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from any directors? Okay, seeing none. Would anybody like to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and move that we approve the fiscal year 2021 to 2022 operating budget and capital improvement plan.
I'll second that.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Well, seeing none, then Melissa, would you please call for the vote?
Okay, Director Balin,
Aye.
Director Boatright,
Aye.
Director Kearns,
Aye.
Director Murphy,
Aye.
Director Ringen.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 5-0.
Thanks, Melissa. And again, thank you to all that showed up here, Matt and Rich and others, and Trevor, to provide the necessary information to the board so we can comprehend the budget and the CIP. So thanks again for all you guys and all your help.
President Bailey, can I make a quick comment too?
You bet, Jeff.
Yeah, this I really enjoyed going through this discussion here today. On my short term on the board here the last couple of years, this was much more informative and much more comfortable than the last time. And I just want to commend our interim general manager, Don Perkins, for having all the troops on staff here on the call or on the Zoom call. And not only were they here and knowledgeable, they were prepared, answered all our questions in a professional manner. And I just want to thank the entire staff. That was great. Good job.
Thank you for those comments, Jeff. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jeff. I think we all echo that. Great. Good job. Okay. So Melissa, would you please read the next item?
And one more comment before she does, since this is another land use issue, and we've done some work on this particular piece of property. I am going to have to recuse myself, so I'm going to sign off, and maybe Corey can let me know when to come back in. Thank you.
Will do.
Thank you, Director Kearns. Appreciate that. Well, okay, this is item number 6. Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, now the director, we'll go ahead and move forward to item number 6. Consider adopting a resolution approving the request for a variance from wastewater section 3.01 regarding service to a non-adjacent parcel, Borquist.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Good morning, Madam President, members of the board, my fellow TUD coworkers, and members of the public. I am Antonio Ramirez. I provide a customer service for the district's engineering department. I'm back with another variance request. My apologies, because it may not be as exciting as the last couple items that were very well presented and really interesting. But variances are very necessary for the district. A variance, in this case, we're requesting a variance from wastewater section 3.01, which tells us that a water main, or in this case, a sewer main, must be adjacent to a parcel in order to get service. This particular parcel is in the city of Sonora. It's off of Bourbon Street. It was a parcel created long ago in a, not even really a parcel map, but kind of parcelized long ago. It's never been developed as far as I'm aware. Doesn't have water or sewer currently stubbed to it. The property owner, the new owner, Judy Borquist, is requesting service from a sewer main from Summit Avenue because we don't currently have one in Bourbon Street. And when in considering her request, we need to decide whether or not a sewer main is going to be useful in this area, whether it could serve other people. So in my inquiry into that, we looked at the, I apologize. I'm not sharing my screen here. So let me do that. And I have it's not the one I want to share. So let's find this one here. Okay, do you see the map there?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So, and you can see my cursor over it?
Yep.
Okay, all right. So the nearest existing sewer mains that we have is we have one over here on the right side of the page in Hope Lane. This is a very old 6-inch vitreous clay. That's what that VC stands for, sewer main. I'm told by Rich Pitcher, who you heard from earlier, the collection superintendent, presents a lot of issues to his field staff. We also have a sewer main in Summit Avenue to the south. This sewer main is not adjacent to the Borquist parcel here in the middle of the page. There isn't one that fronts the Borquist parcel here in Bourbon Street. But if you continue over to the left side of the page here, the west side, you'll see a private sewer line. When there was a larger parcel, which I think from what I remember was an old mining claim, and it was developed and parcelized, decades ago. That particular developer ended up putting in a private sewer line. The Borquist parcel was actually excluded from that original development, which is why I think it didn't go all the way to the Borquist parcel. Also, there's a bit of topography issues with that as well. So when we considered the request for the variance, we looked at this Hope line over here on the right side of the page very closely. And I consulted with field staff and even our inspector, who was familiar with the area, and it appeared that a gravity line to Hope Lane just was going to require pumping. It wasn't going to be something that we could easily put a public sewer main to Hope Lane. And there's only one additional parcel potentially in the area that could potentially be served by a sewer main. And this is one directly across Bourbon Street, this one here that I'm circling. And that parcel also would need to pump. And it's more likely that this particular parcel would gravitate towards a sewer main to the north, which you can't see on my page. So it seemed to make sense to us, and we support the request to run about 120-foot private sewer line from the Borquist parcel across this parcel here to the south, and have a public service lateral off of Summit Lane, which would have a bidirectional clean out. And if some of you aren't familiar, the bidirectional clean out is our current standard for the clean out, the district's clean out, and it's also the demarcation point. It's a clear demarcation point between our maintenance responsibility and the private property owner. So that'll go here where this, roughly where this triangle is, right at the right-of-way line. Things are often out of scale in a map like this, so the clean out itself will be at the right-of-way line of Summit Lane. She has already a easement recorded, so the easement was recorded for this. I should go back and tell you that the developer, made an inquiry. Many people did when this property went for sale, and we sort of explored the options. The developer took the chance of actually recording this easement with the hopes that this variance would be granted. Doesn't mean you got to do it though, but this easement was granted at the same time Ms. Borquist was conveyed this property. So there is an easement in this general location for the private sewer line. And I think, I think I've just about covered it. If I'm missing anything, please let me know. But yeah, let me know if any of you have any questions.
Great. That was really good. Any questions from the board or comments?
We do have Director Murphy with her hand up.
Just a question. When a private sewer line goes in, I understand that from that two-wave clean out, that the responsibility is TUD on the Summit Avenue side and maintenance from there to the house being the private residence's responsibility. When that line goes in, is that a line that the developer pays for? Is that a line that TUD pays for?
So everything the developer will be paying for. So the portion at Summit Avenue will be constructed by a Class A contractor under our inspection. They already have someone in mind. And so we'll inspect that portion. That's only going to be maybe 8 feet long. The rest of it presumably will be the same contractor, but won't be under our inspection. So everything from the main to the house will be paid for by the property owner.
Quick question. Is that gravity fed to Summit? Will that?
Yes, Barbara. Yes, it is. And that's one of the attractive points. Pumping is something that the private property owner obviously wants to avoid just for the extra maintenance costs, energy consumption. The district tries to avoid it whenever they can too. But, as I tell people, our topography is a little bumpy around here. And so you have to make exceptions. But, avoiding pumping is one of the real big reasons we're supporting this particular variance.
Great. Thanks, Antonio.
Welcome.
Okay.
And we have a comment from Director Boatwright.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, Antonio, I see that's a gravity 5-inch sewer main. Would there be any capacity issues with that? That's going to push it up to 7 connections on that line?
I don't know the total number because the connections are coming from the left side of the page from the west. Looks like it's flowing from a west to east sort of fashion. I could jump over to my base map here and count it up for you. We didn't. Yeah.
Antonio, I'll help. We don't believe so, just based on the flow, the slope too. If you've been on that part of Summit Avenue, it's where this connection would be too, is in a pretty steep segment. So the 5-inch line should have no problem at all with the additional flow of this one residence.
Yeah, and there's actually 5 customers upstream of this, and it ends. So there's not too many.
Yeah, I was just counting the, connections that are shown there along Summit on the exhibit map. And then downstream of that, there won't be any further issues on either.
Yeah, I mean, there's always, we have a fairly old system there, so I shouldn't say always, but there's the potential, for issues in the Sonora collection system, just given its age, but we don't feel like, an individual connection is, solely responsible for that. They'll be paying for it with their base rate in the future.
All right, thank you.
We have Director Ringen with a comment.
Thank you. Couple of things. Maybe my old feeble memory. I don't remember getting this many requests for variances in all the years that I've been on the board, but I'm wondering if this has something to do with people, the cost of land and people building on things that used to be not desirable to. That's just a comment and a rhetorical question. What I did want to say is I believe that those parcels that are along Summit Avenue, the one in particular that sewer line is going to go through, are built out. How's that going to work if they are? I mean, that means you're going to be tearing up that one person's yard.
So the first, on your rhetorical question, I have similar thoughts, and I think you're right. I think that there are, property values are up for land, and people are looking for what they can. And the last couple I've run by you are some sort of parcels that haven't really been touched in a long time. So I think you're right. But the intervening parcel is actually currently vacant. And it's owned by the same person who sold Ms. Borquist her property. So, so it shouldn't be an issue. Obviously, is what the owner would be aware of it because they granted the easement, but it's currently vacant, so it shouldn't have an issue. Lots of trees, but other than that, it should be fine.
Okay, great. I'm kind of familiar with that area, and if I remember correctly, they had homes all along Summit. It's built out, but
yep.
And really that's not our issue, that's their issue. I mean, it's from the street on up there is all theirs, not TUD's.
Right. We definitely think about this, when it comes to the intervening property owner, we make sure they're aware, and it is an issue insofar that we don't want to be part of something that causes problems for people. And so we're always trying to make sure that the developer is working those things out. So, but yeah, it's probably one vacant parcel on Summit.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, then I'll open it up to public comment. Any member of the public want to comment?
Not at this moment, no.
Thanks, Corey. All right, well, this is a great discussion, and Antonio, you really, I really appreciate you working with Ms. Borquist, because this is infill and it makes sense with all the other amenities there, including fire protection, et cetera. It's a great neighborhood. I think Delbert Rotelli lives in that area too. So these are bound to come up, but they seem appropriate considering how hodgepodgey. Well, historically we've added services. So again, it's thank you very much for doing your homework on this one, Antonio, and it's a good presentation. I think we all kind of understand the need here. So with that, is there a board director that would like to make a motion?
I would move that we approve the variance for the Borquist property.
Okay.
I can second that.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, then Melissa, would you please call for the vote?
Okay, Director Balin,
Aye.
Director Boatright,
Aye.
Director Murphy,
Aye.
Director Ringen.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes 4-0 with Director Kearns recused.
Thanks. And we'll give Director Kearns a minute to come back into the room and join us for the next item.
I am back.
There. You're on a different iPad, I see.
It's the
There
same
you
one.
are.
I just always have to change my name on there, so
Okay.
sorry.
Okay, real good. All right, so let's move to the next item. Melissa, could you please read item number 7?
Okay, discuss and consider approving the proposal from Carrillo Engineering to perform a condition assessment of the existing Sonora water treatment plant.
Thank you, Melissa, President Baling, and members of the board and public. Trevor Cowden, your water superintendent, with item number 7, consideration of authorizing the Sonora water treatment plant condition assessment with Carrillo Engineering. They've done all the preliminary design for the Sierra Pines future water treatment plant project. That is very thorough and, in my opinion, is laid out very well. With their help, just a little bit of background. Again, page 1 summarizes very well of the Sonora water treatment plant, nearly 100-year-old treatment plant. My idea of screen sharing is a cool picture I have of the early stages of the treatment plant to its present day condition here. 100 years old there, with a clear well and sedimentation basin that we're still using today. It works very well, but as we know, on the CIP is the early stages of a new Sonora water treatment plant, and I know that to still be the plan. To get there, this plant's going to need some help. The treatment plant capacity is 4 million gallons per day, that roughly covers 40% of TUD's customer base. This takes raw water from the Phoenix Lake, and as we've indicated in my over 20 years of working here, the existing plant, it just aged and it could experience critical failure if not rehabilitated in some respects. While TUD intends to construct the new regional water treatment plant to replace the current one, there are concerns with the existing plant components that could fail before a new plant comes online. So a few of the concerns, issues with the existing sedimentation basin, the wood structure element is in disrepair there. So with the tour that I'd like to give with the board, that's coming up on our water committee meeting discussion, you'll be able to see that firsthand. And I think that's really the best way to get a grasp of what's happening at the plant. It's working, but it's beyond the point of improvement, repair. The existing filter backwash pumps are not able to provide sufficient backwash rates. And most importantly, safety concern here, the existing plant electrical and instrumentation systems are beyond their useful life to provide challenges to plant operation and maintenance. So there are components in that plant that you cannot replace like for like anymore. And we'd have a serious issue if they fail on us. That would be a mad scramble to get around and see about any sort of replacement to a critical component. The goal of this project is to perform a condition assessment of major assets to the plant, find out its baseline condition, identify any of the potential pitfalls, failures, and then recommend the priority improvements for rehabilitation that could get the plant fostered through until we get toward the construction of a new one. Again, I plan to work with Carollo. I do know the staff there. I've worked with them again on the design with Sierra Pines. It's a great outfit and I look forward to it. So with that, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer to the best of my ability.
Thank you, Trevor. Yes, Director.
Director.
Oh, sorry, Corey. Yes, Ron.
Yeah, Trevor, I've toured that plant numerous times, and everything you said about it is absolutely correct. It's a hand grenade with a pin out, and it's just a matter of time. Is it not true that there is no viable backup source if that thing were to go down of water?
Yes, thanks, Director Regan. So there is a percentage of demand capacity that can replace it, not complete. So we do have the Greenlee water treatment plant that cannot trade up to the raw turbidity that Sonora can. So there's also a few standby wells throughout the system that would help with that, but not a like for like on day-to-day demands, especially in summertime for that water treatment plant.
So my understanding is if TUD hires this engineering firm, that they're going to evaluate the existing Sonora treatment plant and hopefully give us options in order to get around some of these issues that could pop up so that we can keep the plant running up to speed until the new plant is built. Is that correct?
That is correct. They lay it out in a well task sheet that with a series of meetings. And I do expect to come to that conclusion fairly quickly, as that I have spent some time there at the treatment plant with a few other contractors. You've seen the Tesco proposal included with this. So I have many different opinions to go on out there to bring to this with Carollo. And I do expect a resolution soon.
We have Director Boatwright and also Director Kearns with comments.
Good morning, Trevor. A specific question, in your initial presentation, you mentioned that the backwash pumps are actually undersized or under capacity for backwashing the filters. Is that correct?
That is correct. We actually use the filter pumps to backwash the filters there. So it does not have a set backwash pump to backwash the filters. We don't backwash at the design backwash rate. We do get very good cleaning. It's not optimized. And we know that to be the case with our biannual filter inspections, is that we're not seeing breakthrough mud balls of that nature in the filters themselves.
Okay, and the expectation of this particular item would be a itemized list of what needs to be addressed to basically get the plant's longevity to the point of a new Sonora water treatment plant?
That's correct. Whether or not we have to act on certain items to get through, that will be a question. You know, obviously how much certain items or operations would cost to replace would weigh a lot into that factor. So it's definitely a comeback to the drawing board and act on specifics after we get this condition assessment.
Okay, will it be possible to, and certainly staff could look towards this as to any component items that they come up with that may have a the functional service life beyond the service date of a new plant, that we'd be able to transfer those assets to a new treatment plant?
Yes, potentially. We have done that before in the past. So things like turbidimeters, for example, pump drives, there are a lot of components, yes, that could be.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
We have Director Kearns and then Director Balin with comments.
Okay, yeah, Director Ringen and Director Boatright both covered most of the stuff I wanted to cover, so I'll make my comments brief, but I'm going to be stating the obvious. Trevor, this treatment plant treats water for the bulk of our customers, correct?
40% roughly.
40%, okay, and it's a 100-year-old plant. Seems like it's pretty crystal clear on what we need to do here. So thank you very much. I appreciate the info.
Thank you. Thanks, Jeff.
All right, Director Balin.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I agree. It's pretty clear. And that was a good question that David asked regarding repurposing some of our improvements. My question is, will Carollo and staff rank some of the recommendations in terms of improvements? Will they rank them like, health and safety? Number one, fix the electrical, for an example.
That's a good question. I know we use the ranking system in the development of like Sierra Pines. I think it's makes complete sense to break it down that way of importance. So I will take that recommendation too and make sure we have some sort of way to narrow down the critical components that need attention.
That'd be good, because it's going to be a few years before we get that other plan online. So, we can chunk that, by CIP a little at a time, but yeah, get some of the critical stuff. So good. Thank you. And that's all I have.
Thank you.
Well, any other comments, questions from the directors? Nope. Okay. Let's open it up to the public for any comments.
I don't see any public comment at this moment.
Thank you, Corey. So we'll close off public comment. And again, if there's no further questions, then I'll call for a motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the proposal from Carollo Engineering to perform that assessment of the Sonora water treatment plant.
I can second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, so Melissa, would you please call for the vote?
Okay, Director Balin,
Aye.
Director Boatright,
Aye.
Director Kearns,
Aye.
Director Murphy,
Aye.
Director Ringen.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes 5-0.
Thanks, Melissa. And again, thank you, Trevor, for your ability to answer all our questions and developing this proposal. And I enjoyed reading it. I liked seeing the words kickoff meeting, so that was good, just get an idea of what they plan to do. So great work. Thank you. Well, let's move to item number 8.
Okay, item number 8, discuss and consider possibly directing staff to request proposals for executive recruitment services for the permanent general manager position.
All right, good morning. We're still in the morning. Thank you, Melissa. Abby Parkon, Administrative Services Director. Everyone's done such a great job this morning. I wish I could say that save the best for last, but I have the last 2 items, so so we'll hang together for a couple of items here. But these are are important topics to the board. So the first of which, like Melissa just mentioned, is for this board to discuss how they would like to move forward with the executive search for a permanent general manager. As by way of background, the general manager position was vacant since April 1st, and your board appointed Don Perkins as interim general manager effective last Monday, June 14th. And so has, but you know, in that process, it is now the board's decision how to go about the executive recruitment to fill the permanent position. We brought this item to the HR External Relations Committee on June 10th to discuss that process, and I gave the committee a history, just a short, brief history of executive recruitments in the past year at TUD. The board has hired 4 separate, all different executive search firms for hiring a general manager since 2006, so about the last 15 years or so. And the board has that decision in front of them again today. So what we talked about at the committee is we went through the brief overview of the RFP process that we followed in 2018. And we also briefly looked at the GM recruitment brochure advertisement that we used in 2018, as well as the list of search firms that we issued the RFP to. So all of those documents are in with your board packet for your review and for potential revision or discussion today, or further for updates for 2021 recruitment. But the committee ended up recommending, and then certainly the committee chair, Director Murphy, if you'd like to speak up, or President Balin as well, but the committee recommended that we bring this item to the full board, recommending that to direct staff to issue an RFP to executive search firms for the recruitment to see what the quotes would come in at, and then the board at that time would make a decision on whether or not they would wish to pursue that route or not. So with that, Director Murphy?
Yeah, just a quick addition. Thank you, Abby. That was fantastic. Yeah, the thought is to see what it would cost to do it this way, and then have the discussion of if we're doing it in-house or out of house for this, but to come into that discussion with a little bit more information. So that was the reason for asking for the board to approve just finding out what this would cost us. Does that sound accurate, Abby?
It sure does to me.
Yeah, go ahead, Ron.
So I'd like to suggest, along with sending out those RFPs, which I think is a good idea, so we know what we're faced with if that's the way we decide to go. But I'd like to suggest that maybe, because we have a real good relationship with them, that maybe some sort of reach out to Calaveras County Water to see what the process was that they went through in-house in order to hire their current GM. They apparently really did a great job because they have a really good GM in place right now. So anyway, just a suggestion.
I think that's a great suggestion, Ron Ringen. And Abby, how would we go about doing that?
Well,
we can investigate on both sides.
Yeah, sure. I actually have a pretty good relationship. Stacy Lawler's the HR director over there at CCWD. And so while I haven't spoken to her on this topic, we share ideas and network back and forth with some other HR folks on the Western Slope, as well as some other water districts. And so I'm happy to reach out to her and look into the process that they took.
And then I guess this is probably a question I saw Jesse earlier. For Jesse, is it possible to change the motion on this to include both things or would we need to do two separate motions and one of those would need to be in a future meeting?
Oh, you could combine motions as long as it's properly agendized, the description of the action to be taken, absolutely.
Okay, so we could have the recommendation be for both the asking Abby to go forward with the executive recruitment proposal request, as well as reaching out to Calaveras County to understand better their in-house process.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that I don't know if that would necessarily require a separate motion just to speak to Calaveras County on the process that they utilize. That I think that just simple direction to Abby to double check and see what they did, what worked for them. If they had to do it again, perhaps what they might do differently, but it sounds like it worked very well for them. So yeah, no, that would be just fine. If you wanted to make it very formal, you could add it into the motion directing Abby to do so. But yeah, there's no issue with adding that in. Lisa, the short answer is no problem with adding that in.
Okay, cool. And just a question for the general board, just to get kind of a feel for, would most people, just wondering if folks would like us to pursue both of those avenues at this point.
I have one question, and then certainly, think that should be open to, go both ways at the same time. I was wondering if the TUD actually has a proprietary rights to use the past brochure that was developed by the last consulting firm.
Yes, it was a work product from the work that we hired the consultant to do. So yes, it is a TUD owned document at this point.
All right, thank you.
And we can make changes to that document with no problem, right?
Yes. Go ahead, Director Ringen.
So one other suggestion, which will involve the board members, would be, while this process that Abby Parkon is going through, we could maybe have I don't know whether it would start at the HR outreach committee first and then go to the full board. But it's a full board that's going to need to finally decide this. And that is, I think we need to, for sure, no matter which way we go in our search for the permanent GM, that the board gets together on an agendized item and discusses. I don't know whether this would have to go to a closed session or whether it can be done in open session. I leave that up to Jesse to say. But for us to come to an agreement of what we're looking for exactly in a permanent, excuse me, a permanent GM, because that's one of the reasons, well, that was the big reason why we hired a, and I don't want to do this again, I'm not suggesting it, but why we hired a, Barbara be able to think of the right word, but it was like a person that, a facilitator, that's what I'm trying to say. At any rate, because the board was split as to numerous things. And so with the facilitator, we got the board to all basically agree on what it was exactly we were looking for. I don't know any rational way of being able to, if we were to go out and hire a recruitment firm, if all of us are not on the same page, I don't know what they're going to be looking for.
We have Director Balin with a comment.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, good point. Perhaps we can, I'm just throwing this out, we could have a full board closed session where we go over the brochure, maybe update it or ascribe some values to some of those things, because it was problematic, as well as some of the interview questions I found were a little bit problematic also. So that may just, I'm just throwing out a suggestion. We may all want to, as a full board, review the brochure and update it or come already prepared to the meeting with some suggestions to update that brochure and carefully look at the salary and maybe ascribe some values to some of those qualifications we're interested in. So please have that discussion. I was going to say something else too, real quick. Regarding Calaveras, they didn't do an external recruitment, and neither did Amador. They both used their HR, and both of them succeeded in finding good general managers. With Calaveras, it's sort of the equivalent of us asking Tom Trott to take over. I mean, because Michael Minkler was just right upstream, you know, a few miles on the same watershed, and he was the GM for Utica Power Water Authority. So basically he came on down and they were happy with, I mean, that was almost like succession planning. And then their PR person then became the GM for that and applied for it, et cetera. But with the Amador, they did an internal scouting and they pulled somebody from out of the area. So we've got two examples, and Abby, that may be helpful also to call the Amador HR and see how they did it as well. And yeah, because I think Calaveras, they already sort of, you know, they had it pretty much figured out. Yeah.
Okay, I can do that.
We have Jesse with a comment, and then Director Murphy.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Corey. And so my comment addresses Director Ringen and President Balin's thoughts about a possible closed session. A closed session to just discuss generally what the board is looking for in a general manager would not normally be the subject of a closed session. The purpose of a closed session for personnel is to protect sensitive discussions with a named individual, generally speaking. And if the board doesn't have a person in mind, then it is not normally, not in this case, as it was described to me here today, it's not appropriate for a closed session. If there is a named person or something like that where it may be necessary to protect confidentiality, the identity of that person, we can talk about that at a future time, but not as it's currently described to me. Thank you.
So Jesse, you would recommend it would just be a board workshop on
Yes.
this item?
Yes, I do. Yes.
Thank you.
All right, Director Murphy.
Thank you. Yeah, so I just wanted to kind of pull this all together. And so we had asked Abby to go ahead and put the brochure into the agenda so people could start looking at that and start thinking about what on that seems relevant at this point and what on that doesn't seem relevant at this point. And on that, you're gonna, things that you're gonna see are what are, for the ideal candidate, what we're defining or what you defined at that time for the ideal candidate, for the employment standards, and what the general manager is doing. That's broken up into a couple of categories. So the request on this from the HR committee meeting is for everybody to go ahead and start familiarizing yourselves with that one. I think the idea of a board workshop is a great idea. And then the other big thing was to just start the process of moving forward on how we're going to find a person once we come up with our parameters. what is our process going to be for looking for this person? Will it be an in-house or an out-of-house? So if people are comfortable with it at this point, I'd be happy to make a motion. Basically, the motion would be, I just scrolled to the wrong thing here. That we go ahead and do the, sorry, I'm on the wrong page. That we direct staff to request proposals from consultant firms to perform an executive recruitment service, says, for the position of the general manager. So that we put that, sorry, in making a motion, I shouldn't explain, but just so we get that process started. And then would you recommend, Jesse, that I also put in that motion that we also instruct staff, Abby, to report back to us on the process that Amador and Calaveras counties have used for their internal recruitment? I mean, their, however you say that, the process that they went through to recruit?
Yeah, I think that'd absolutely be appropriate, Director Murphy, and that just gives Abby clear direction on what the board seeks, and to provide additional information to the board at a future board meeting when she's reached out to those contacts and collected the necessary information. And then that necessary information may help inform the board on how it wants to conduct its recruitment process. So absolutely, very appropriate.
All right, would you be willing to clean up that motion?
Yes, so I'll give it a shot here.
Thank you.
So, Director Murphy, are you going to make them? Well,
Yes.
let's see how I do in verbalizing it.
Thank
and
you.
then make a decision and see if anybody's willing to make that to move as presented. The motion would be to direct Abby to contact Calaveras and Amador counties recruitment, or her counterpart at those two districts, and inquire about their experiences with recruitments for a general manager position, report back to the board, and then also authorize Abby to request proposals for executive recruitment services for the position of interim GM.
I think the one word I changed in there is changed to process rather than.
Okay.
I can't remember what word it was.
And we don't want an interim, we want a permanent.
This is for a permanent, yeah. So
okay, I'm sorry.
Maybe
yeah.
I'll rephrase. I'll make a motion and rephrase.
Eventually we'll get there, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. But that was very helpful. So I move that we direct staff, Abby, to perform the executive recruitment, to request proposals from consultant firms to perform executive recruitment services for the position of general manager, and that we also direct Abby to reach out to Calaveras County and Amador County to understand the process they used in their general manager recruitment.
And report back to the board on her findings.
And report back to the board on her findings.
May I amend that?
I could just restate it if you tell me what you want in it.
Okay, it just would be include Director Ringen's and that we hold a public board workshop to go over the qualifications.
So does that have to be in a motion? Don't we just do that?
Well, do we all agree to do it? Are we all okay to do that? I mean, it's just a clean record. Do you have a problem amending to include that we hold another?
I just think if we do those two things separately, that would be cleaner. So if somebody just has a problem with how we're going to proceed forward once we get that information or where that information is getting presented, that would be it'd just be we're then putting 4 things into a motion. We already have put 3 things into the motion. It just seems like a lot. If normally we just leave it to the board president to tell us to do the meeting, right? To do the workshop. Don't we just normally leave that to you, Barb?
Well, you know, it just seemed that Director Ringen brought that up, that Jesse clarified that it would be a public meeting. It just seemed appropriate to stick it in. But if it's too big of a package, then, you know, it's okay. And I think Director Ringen may want to comment on this too. Go ahead, Ron.
Okay. First of all, I don't think that it needs to be included. I think it's just going to be business as usual. It's something that we need to do. But if it were to get included, that's okay by me too. The only thing that I do think that needs to be changed, even though we all know what we're talking about, but you said Calaveras County and Amador County, and it's not them, it's the water districts.
Very good. Yeah, so let me restate it and I'll do that. But if we're okay, just with the meeting thing being separate, that would be great.
I'm fine. I'm fine.
Cool. So I move that we direct staff to request proposals from consultant firms to perform the executive recruitment services for the position of general manager, and that Abby reach out to Amador and Calaveras County water districts.
Not county, just what?
Well,
well,
Calaveras and Amador water districts.
No, one's county.
Calaveras County and Amador Water District.
Water Agency.
Water
AWA.
Agency.
Here we go. Good.
Okay. To
inquire
understand the process with which they recruited for general manager positions.
and present those findings at the future board meeting.
Perfect.
Is there a
second?
future meeting of the board in case it's a workshop instead?
Okay, I'm going to second that right now so we can get moving on.
Good one. Okay, very good. And Melissa, did you capture that okay?
Thank you, President Balin. I will probably go back and listen to it.
Very good. Very good. Okay, great. All right, so we have a motion by Director Murphy, second by Director Ringen. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, then Melissa, would you please call for the vote?
Okay, Director Balin,
Aye.
Director Boatright,
Aye.
Director Kearns,
Aye.
Director Murphy,
Aye.
Director Ringen.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 5-0.
Thank you, Melissa. I just wanted to add, and this is just a note to Abby, and I know you will do this, but when you talk to the HR folks at Amador and Calaveras, could you just ask them also how much of their time it took?
Sure.
Good, thanks. Okay, very good. Then we'll move on to the next item, which is our last item. Item number 9. Melissa, would you please read that?
Update on COVID-19 guidelines related to resuming in-person board and committee meetings and possible decision on date of first in-person meeting.
Okay, good afternoon. And I am clear on the last item, so we're good to go. Okay, excellent. Well, thank you again, President Balin, members of the board, members of the public, and all staff that are listening in. So most recently at the board's June 8th meeting, I presented some information we brought back to the board, a discussion for your board to review any updates to COVID-19 guidelines and make a decision possibly whether or not to conduct in-person meetings again and at what time. And at that time, there was a lot of unknowns. Between Cal OSHA, CDC, State of California. So it was slightly premature. Since June 8th, several decisions have been made at the state level, and then so both by the governor and by Cal OSHA. So most recently, or starting right after the June 8th meeting on June 11th, the governor signed Executive Order N-821, which had many elements to it, but related to public meetings and the Brown Act. It specifically has put expirations to the authorizations from the former executive orders N-2920 and N-3520 that provided flexibility to have virtual public meetings like we're doing now without with waiving some of the requirements with respect to posting your location and those things. So on June 11th, that executive order did put an expiration to allowing virtual meetings as they are and in requiring the board to hold open meetings physically and in person. And that expiration is September 30th. So sometime between now and September 30th, the board is required to provide physical in-person access to public meetings. Okay, so that is brand new information for the board since our last meeting. We also talked in past meetings, starting as early as February 4th at the HR and External Relations Committee about possible changes to the boardroom. The board, I think, came to consensus that, that you didn't want to spend a lot of money on changes to the boardroom. And since then also, since June 15th, and then also with the Cal OSHA revisions, physical distancing is no longer required. Barriers are no longer required. So those change up the number of folks that we can have at the meetings. In addition to that, both the state orders and the Cal OSHA most recently adopted revisions on June 17th for the emergency temporary standards, eliminates the requirement for fully vaccinated individuals to wear a face mask indoors. There are some exemptions, but none of them apply to TUD. So I'm not going to go into those because they're external to TUD. So let's see, did I miss anything? And then also TUD for under Cal OSHA for its workers must have available N95 respirators for workers who are not fully vaccinated for their voluntary use. So those are the main three changes for Cal OSHA, and at the state level is no face mask requirement for fully vaccinated individuals, removed the physical distancing and barrier provisions of the emergency temporary standard, and then the availability of N95s for unvaccinated individuals. So we have, we've continued to work closely. We talk with Tuolumne County Public Health almost on a daily basis, and they are consistent with those guidelines that I just outlined. And then we are also just now, since the revisions were just adopted at the end of last week, we are working with Liebert Cassie Whitmore, our employment law consortium, to revise our COVID prevention program to include these revisions from Cal OSHA. So with that, I would like to, I can answer any questions you have and then open it up for board discussion.
Director Balin does have a comment.
Yes, thanks, Abby. And now, do I understand it that because these executive orders have been sunsetted, that we go back to, if we are going to be teleconferencing out of another facility, that needs to be posted and the public is actually can come in and observe the meeting, or did I not hear? Can you please explain that part again?
Sure, and I didn't highlight that, so that's good actually. In the staff memo, I did mention that there are various bills that are in the works. Nothing has been adopted on a temporary basis, but as everything is now, by September 30th, you have in-person meetings, and all of the provisions of the Brown Act for public meetings would go back into place unless something between now and September 30th changes to allow more flexibility and to incorporate new technologies with public meetings. And I'm happy to defer to Jesse if he has a different understanding, but I did check with Jesse. I also had a conversation with our legal consortium, and that is their understanding at this time. So yes, if you were to join the meeting from your home, you would go back to the normal posting requirements. It would have to be posted on our website, your location, and you would post it outside of your home and have to allow physical access to any member of the public who wish to join you at your location.
Thank you.
Okay.
We have Director Murphy with a comment.
Question, actually. So Abby, with comparison to do you know the comparison to the state? I just know that the Tuolumne County, it was in the one of the news feeds a couple days ago, that there are 5 new cases in Tuolumne County. 4, they were originally reported that all 5 people were non-vaccinated, and then they did a correction a day later saying that one of the 5 new cases actually was a fully vaccinated individual that in the county that tested positive for COVID. And that I think we have 1 person newly hospitalized due to COVID, a total of 71 deaths in the county. And a percentage, our case rate right now is positivity is 0.7%, which I think kept us before still in the orange range. I'm not exactly sure because that whole system is gone now. But could you shed a little bit more light on what specifically, if our county is doing better or worse than average in California? And the reason I asked this question is my impression was we were not doing as well as many places in California because our vaccination rate is lower.
So I'll go back to your first comment. That is my understanding. With the 5 individuals that COVID cases, that was over a 3-day period because there was a newly signed into law federal holiday. So the Tuolumne County Public Health did not report out on Friday. I'm sorry, maybe they took Monday off. One of those days, there was 5 cases in 3 days. And yeah, on a couple of the daily updates, there has been a correction that one of the individuals that they reported originally that were not vaccinated ended up being vaccinated. So I can confirm that, but I can't confirm the exact date of that correction. As far as the positivity rate, yes, it's at 0.7. And then the last day they had the blueprint that you're referring to, the orange tier, before they eliminated those tiering, it was looked about similar, the number of orange tier versus yellow tier in the state, and we were in the orange tier. So I think we're right about average in that way. As far as vaccination status, we have looked at the numbers, but it hasn't been specifically the percentage of the eligible people in the county. I have not seen that number recently. So to comment on whether it's lower or higher or average, I don't have that information.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Abby, I have a question for you. In the ongoing evolution of COVID. Is a district now to move forward with public meetings and non-mask requirements indoors? Does the district have the right to ask an employee or member of the public if they have been vaccinated?
So there are oh boy, there's a lot of implications to that. One of the implications is that it's implied one way or another what your vaccination status is. If you're wearing a mask, you're not vaccinated. If you aren't, you are. I mean, that's not across the board, but there are ways, but from what I'm seeing, and we're following very strict guidelines with Liebert Custody Whitmore, and we haven't finalized anything, is that the majority of people are going to be based on this, what's called self-attestation. So someone will self-attest to whether they were vaccinated or not providing any kind of medical status or any kind of privacy information that is not allowed under the law, but to basically say whether or not they have met that requirement, and so if they have to wear a face mask or not. I don't know of anyone, at least at a public agency, that is going to be requiring someone to do that to attend a public meeting. But I haven't talked to all the public agencies. So did that answer your question?
Yeah, the information is just basically voluntary, but I was just wondering if we had a system to ask. Yeah.
Yes, there are some forms that our legal consortium have provided that we're reviewing very carefully, and we'll follow up with them to ensure that we're providing a good system that we can follow the guidelines without invading our employees' privacy.
Director Ringen has a comment, and then Director Murphy.
Yeah, that's kind of a concern of mine that Director Boatwright brought up, because I know several people that are adamant they will never get vaccinated, and that's their right, but then they put at risk all the rest of us, and especially those of us that are high risk. And vaccinated or not, they can spread it to a person that's been vaccinated. That's kind of scary.
Right, Director Murphy?
Yeah. I just want to double check that I have everything that Abby has said clearly. So I'm just going to reiterate what I think you said, Abby, and tell me if I've got it right. So as far as state law goes, we have until sometime in September to go, unless things change along the way with the Delta variant. I think there's a reasonable chance that they will. So right now, with how things stand, we have until September to go back to normal meeting requirements as stated by the Brown Act. In the meantime, if we choose to continue with doing Zoom meetings, at this point, we do not have to do locations, and that those special considerations that were put in place for COVID stay in place until the date that you said in September. I don't remember which day it was, that date until September. So we can keep doing what we're doing until September. If we decide to go to in-person meetings, let's say we went to in-person meetings in August, at that point, we have to comply with when we make that transition back to being in the boardroom, we also make that transition to it being all in person, subject to normal Brown Act requirements. So no hybrid of anything or anything like that. It's just all in person with that same thing of needing to specify where, if you're calling in, and make that place public. Am I understanding that correctly, Abby?
Well, I didn't address that specifically, but it is my understanding, and I see, and Jesse, please chime in, that the provisions that were set forth in the authorizations that were set forth in the earlier COVID executive orders expire September 30th. So I don't think once you start with in-person meetings, that triggers a different expiration date for a hybrid. Is that correct, Jesse?
Correct. The exceptions in the executive order are in effect until September 30th, and those exceptions are in effect whether the public agency desires to have a hybrid meeting, it desires to have a pure Zoom meeting like this, or if it desires to go to pure physical meetings. And it can switch back and forth if it wants. If it tries physical meetings and they don't work out, they can go back to Zoom, sole Zoom meetings, all the way up until September 30th. October 1st, that's the deadline. All of those exceptions expire as of midnight. And we are back to what everybody understood was how the Brown Act worked prior to this pandemic.
Unless another legislation
Yes,
sets new parameters.
New laws change anything.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. Absolutely. And
As of today.
Right. Okay. Okay. Thank you for that clarity. I appreciate it.
We have Director Balin and then Director Ringen with a comment.
Thank you. Yes. So Jesse, just so I can get an understanding of this, let's say those standing closed session meetings regarding PG&E acquisition, where I imagine the board might have an option if they want to meet in person, you would probably Zoom in, I'm thinking.
Yes.
And then, or any other board member could Zoom in at those. So they would be kind of a hybridized thing. Would that be something we could do?
Yes. Let me add some clarification to that. The obligations under the Brown Act prior to this pandemic were that board members who want to call into a meeting have to post their physical location. They have to allow the public. If you're going to call in from your house, you have to allow members of the public to visit you in your home and participate there with you in your home, or whatever location, whatever remote location you are utilizing. However, staff or consultants have always had the ability to call into a meeting or Zoom into a meeting, such as myself, prior to the pandemic, during the pandemic, and post-pandemic. So non-board members have different standards, such as myself. But the closed sessions, yes, if up until September 30th, if the board wants to have those closed sessions solely by Zoom, I can Zoom in. If the board wants to have them in person, I can drive and visit. We could do a hybrid where the board is in person and I Zoom in, whatever the board's pleasure, up until September 30th.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, great.
Director Ringen and then Director Murphy.
Well, maybe I missed it during Abby Parkon's presentation of this item. But has Corey figured out a way to both Zoom the meeting if it was done in person there in the boardroom? Are the cameras set up correctly for that?
Yes, it is something that we can do. I have tested it beforehand and could do a couple more tests, but we do have the ability in a couple different ways and solutions to where if we desire to, we can do it.
So the cameras would pick up the board members that are present and any speakers that would go to the podium. And what about presentations like PowerPoints and things like that?
It can be done.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, we have Director Murphy and then Director Kearns.
Yeah, and just a couple more clarifications. So on what Director Ringen was just saying, the board packets ahead of time would include the PowerPoint presentations or something so that the people that were Zooming in would have the same information. There wouldn't be more information presented in person than there is presented to those folks on Zoom. So that would just be something that I would say has to happen if we go that way. The other question was back to Abby to just double check my understanding, maybe Abby or Jesse. But you were saying, right, that basically any regulations on social distancing and any enforcement of mask stuff is gone. Is that correct? Meaning that people a member of the public could wear a mask or not wear a mask, but we're not going to be asking if anybody's vaccinated. And if somebody's not vaccinated and not wearing a mask, we're not going to require them to wear a mask. So ultimately, it would mean that the no masks, no social distancing in the boardroom and no limitation on the numbers. Is that correct too? Just normal standard.
There are limitations on numbers, but they're far greater than our capacity of the room. It's upwards of 10,000 people for mass gatherings. There's some other restrictions, but we can set up the room how we want to set up the room. It doesn't necessarily mean that now we think it's best to put as many chairs as we did in before. We can certainly change up the layout of the audience section if we want to accommodate a little bit more social distancing than we originally did when we were in pre-COVID days, where it was just, audience style.
But there wouldn't be an official limitation. That thing of before we were discussing how many members of the public would be allowed to come in and how staff would be coming in and going and stuff like that based on how many people would fit in the room doing social distancing. And with the social distancing piece lifted, right, then now I would assume that we wouldn't put out any limitation for how many members of the public.
Well, I think the board can if it wishes to.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that would just be a announcement of how we're proceeding forward.
Yes, we would have to put that information out to the public so they were aware if there were any limitations on the number of attendees.
Okay. And if we are trying to limit the number of attendees, would we be, well, I guess that would be something that we decided on how we were going to do. Like we get a lot of staff presentations, and like today we would have had a lot of people in the room, and it was really great to just be able to turn and ask, like basically on this, turn and ask the question, and for people like Eric to pass the question off to Glenn or to pass it off to, because they were all available real time in the Zoom space, and so we would just have to figure that piece of the puzzle out too, I suppose.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, we have Director Kearns and then Director Boatright.
Yeah, Abby, I hope we never have anything controversial enough to get 10,000 people at one of our meetings. That would be a disaster. Anyway, we touched on this briefly on our last update on this, but it might be a good idea to incorporate Zoom with the live meeting, and we all are sitting here on our Microsoft Surfaces and we're on Zoom just like staff is today in their individual offices. That might be a good hybrid solution. And the other thing is, I've said it before and I'll say it again, I am not in favor of meeting publicly until, I am not in favor of meeting in a public meeting unless the mask requirement is gone. And it sounds like we're very close, or maybe we're already there, it sounds like. But I don't want to meet if we have to wear a mask. That makes it too uncomfortable to see people talk, hear them, listen to them, all the above. That's it for me. Thank you.
Right. Director Boatright and then Director Balin.
Actually, my question would be for you, Corey. And it goes along the same line. I currently enjoy having the, director iPad as well as my personal computer for running the Zoom. Would I have, in a hybrid situation, the same ability to observe on a close-up screen the Zoom meeting as well as an agenda? Basically like two monitors?
Is that if you were to be sitting here in the boardroom, or?
Correct.
Yeah, you could definitely be, I'm trying to think again. Can you rephrase the question just so I can make sure I understood it again? Sorry about that.
I was wondering if under a hybrid situation, if to be present sitting in the boardroom, if we had people Zooming in, would I have the ability to have the Zoom meeting in front of me as well as my computer to follow along on the agenda?
Yeah, so my thought, and again, I'd have to probably just do some testing just to make sure it plays out the way I envision it, but my thought would be is that each board member would still have their Surface device in front of them for the agenda, but then any Zoom participation or viewing would actually be on the TV screen or on the two TV screens within the boardroom. So you could view whoever's calling in on the TV, but then have your device in front of you. That way you don't have a whole bunch of different devices in front of you, and then it kind of lessens the number of screens that are in the Zoom call to just a single one for the boardroom.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we have Director Balin and then Director Kearns.
Okay, that was a good question, David. So we're not, because we did have this question, we don't show up live anymore. We don't bring our Surface Pros iPads to the board meeting to be on camera. They are there for their original purpose, which was to show us the agenda, an electronic agenda. Okay, so I understand that. And so then all of those that are at the board meeting will be on one of our Granicus cameras then. And then those that zoom in will be on the TV screen. And so my second, I think I understand that, but then my wrap-up question is, can we, Abby and Jesse, legally begin to meet in person in the boardroom and unmasked, and if we've been vaccinated, and have the public in a limited way come in unmasked? Can we just meet in the boardroom now unmasked? Is that legal?
Yes. Yes. Unvaccinated people can meet indoors without a mask, and
unvaccinated? Unvaccinated people?
Fully vaccinated. I'm sorry if I mixed myself up. Thank you. Fully
vaccinated are still supposed to be wearing a mask.
Fully vaccinated folks can come. Her question was about, can we meet without masks? So yes, excuse me, I mixed up. Fully vaccinated folks can meet indoors without masks. We have masks available for folks who need it, who don't have one, and that haven't been vaccinated. We also have N95s available for people. And then if the board decides that they want to, whenever you decide that you'd like to start those again, yes, legally we can meet in there as you just described.
And it's on the individual's honor to wear a mask if they're unvaccinated.
Yes.
So Jeff, this satisfies your concern.
Yeah, it sounds like it does. And yeah, I'd be willing to meet under those circumstances. One more question though for Corey. So then we wouldn't be on Zoom sitting at the dais as well as the room camera, correct?
Actually, it would be doing both. So the camera that we were using is Granicus. We can tap that into Zoom, so it'd be the same viewing within a Zoom meeting.
Okay, yeah, I think it'd be a good idea if we were all on Zoom at the dais or in our spots up there at the boardroom as well. And I think I'm asking a question that I already know the answer to, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Obviously, TUD there, hardware-wise, you have the bandwidth because you've already got Eric and Abby and Don and Steve and Doug and Eric Hall and everybody else on there, and everybody seems to work just fine, correct?
Oh, yeah, correct. Director Murphy?
Just follow up on Jeff Kern's comment. So not everybody, technically at this point, not everybody would be mask free. Only people who are vaccinated. And so you would expect that some people would be wearing masks, and because they're unvaccinated. Second question, with Corey on the IT side of things, are most people, I would imagine most people in their offices are hardwired in, and this would be all of us, am I correct, using Wi-Fi?
Yeah, correctly. Everybody is, all their desk computers are hardwired in. You would be using your Surface devices for agenda, so that'd take minimal bandwidth, and the camera is hardwired. So bandwidth-wise, we should be perfectly fine.
Okay, and I turned my Surface tablet back in because I prefer using my Mac. And so I would just be connecting through Wi-Fi if I was in the room, and as well as other people with the Surface tablets. So I wouldn't have it preloaded. I would be, how I am following along on everything is I pull up the agenda on one computer, and I pull up the meeting on a separate computer, and I'm following along in that way. But that you're saying if we were all doing that, that wouldn't be a problem for the Wi-Fi.
Correct.
Okay.
Steve has a comment. You're currently muted, Steve.
Sorry, I'll never get that straight. Anyway, Director Murphy, just a response to your question is that Corey and I have been talking about this, working it. You know, prior to COVID, we always had Granicus, which was a camera focused on the dais. And so the board had their discussions. It wasn't this one-on-one face like we have the privilege of right now with Zoom, but we do have dedicated laptops that we acquired for Zoom meetings. So if any board member did not have their Surface Pro with them, like I know you turned yours in, we have these dedicated ones. They have a camera, they have everything on there. You could log in just like at home. Just like, you know, Jeff's example with dual screens, or your example, you know, we have multiple laptops available. We could set you up with that, same setup. And then we also still have your Surface Pro if you need to do that. So we've done several things with Wi-Fi and training and everything else. So we certainly can work it out. But like Corey said, my main concern would be, you know, the experience for the customers calling in or participating, the community members, to be able to do that. And we have the two large screens in our boardroom that would be showing just like what you're looking at now. But then we have basically full-size laptops that you can utilize for the board packet, for the PDF, for the particular item. So we'll continue to work on it as we go forward. But, you know, Corey's really tried to look at it from all the options, and you've had great questions and comments. We appreciate it.
And the follow-up just to what you're just saying to clarify, just so I understand, there's two TV screens in there. And so one of those TV screens, I think I heard Corey say, would be dedicated to the offsite Zoom interaction, and one would be dedicated to the agenda, or?
Well, no. Usually what we have happen is the two screens are set up so that every chair in the room can see them. So those two screens normally just always show the same thing. we rarely have the room filled with ratepayers unless we're doing a rate hike or something of that sort. But basically, at your desk, you would have, you know, the screens would be showing the Zoom people, and then you would have in front of you the particular packet or whatever else. Then the camera is going to be looking at you and filming the interaction between the board.
And so the public in the past, when they came to the meeting, right, the presentations and stuff were up on both of those screens simultaneously?
Right. Typically, I would go to the podium. I would share my screen if we were in Zoom, or in person, I would change the two screens to show what I was showing there.
Okay.
So the screens would be showing the same thing that the person sitting at home is viewing if they're zoomed in.
Okay. And if they wanted to follow along on the agenda, they would bring their own additional device and.
Yeah, you know, typically, again, the board packet is posted ahead of time, so you at home can open up the board packet. We typically would print packets available for people who showed up to the room, and they could follow along with that as well.
That must be a nice expense that we are not doing right now.
Well, you know, we tried to just do mainly the agenda and just have a handful of the 100-page packets. Because again, typically we usually average 1 or 2 persons a board meeting. Now that could change going forward, but that was what it was like over the past 10 years. So I hope that helps. I just want to tag in. Corey's the expert. I have full confidence in him. However the board decides they want to go, we'll go however you direct us.
Cool. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Sorry, Director Boatright.
All right, just for comedic effect, Steve, what would a 4,000-page agenda printout look like? As to the one in the past. If I've got this correct, Jesse, moving forward after September 30th, is the public still allowed to, are we, under the current situation, still required to allow public to Zoom in? Or will any public participation after June or September 30th be required to be in person under what we're seeing as current?
Yeah, good question, Director Boatright. The way it would work is if you allow one person, for example, staff or consultant, to Zoom in, but the board is there in person, you must provide members of the public that same opportunity. So yes, the short answer is yes, the board could allow that, but it is not required to. Okay, does that help? Does that answer the question, or did I, maybe I didn't hit it? You're still looking like a follow-up question. Go ahead.
Well, I was just, you know, because pre-pandemic, let's go back pre-pandemic, would a member of the public been able to call into a meeting to post their questions or give a public comment?
Yes. The answer is yes, they could have. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Any further comments from directors? Well, this has been really, really valuable discussion, and I really want to thank you, Abby, for looking into all the compliance issues and OSHA issues. I think we've got a lot more information than we did last board meeting. And I really respect every board director's concerns here. I want to make sure that we're all comfortable and we go forward in a legal way, which it sounds like we will be. And I want to thank Corey also for really working out the bugs to figure out how we can do a hybridized, and Steve also. So I think we've got enough information if we wanted to go forward with a possible decision. We would be within our parameters for this agenda item. Is there anybody that would like to make a motion?
I would just like to make one more comment, if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay. The Delta variant and tourist season makes me a little uncomfortable. And the fact that somebody in our county that was fully vaccinated just tested positive for coronavirus, showing that is happening here. And knowing that the state is allowing us to continue as we are until September 30th, and knowing that also in this county, my experience has been that there, even when masks were required, that there were lots of people who were choosing not to wear masks. All of these factors put together make me more interested in we're still very much in a global pandemic, make me interested in going as we're going, moving forward through this tourist season, as we have so many global visitors coming through our local economy, because our economy is based on a big part on tourism and the restaurants and the hotels and stuff. So anyway, I just wanted to put my my 2 cents out there on that, and that's I'm still on that side of things.
Thank you. Well, seeing no motions, it looks like we will just be business as usual. And this will just be a discussion item then. Okay. Let's move on to, and thank you for preparing all that, everyone, and being prepared. We'll move on to staff reports.
Hello, Barbara. I have no staff reports. Thank you.
No
Thank you,
staff report
Don.
from me. Thank you. Nothing from me.
Well, I was waiting for Eric to say, I have a staff report, so I am assuming he's deferring to me. Just as an update for the board, we've had active, ongoing conversations with USDA ever since we had the bid opening. Eric has reached out to everyone over there. We've contacted the investment people. We've gotten some questions and requests from USDA. So, my report to the board is that we are actively seeking solutions and options as they relate to the USDA project. They gave us the impression they would have a relatively quick turnaround time. There was a lot of activity last week, but we are continuing to work diligently on it, and hopefully we'll be bringing to the board some alternatives and options and recommendations how to go forward. But I just wanted you to know that we are working with USDA and going forward to the best of our abilities. Thank you. Jeff?
Yeah, Steve, I take it that's on the shortfall from the bids that we opened and received on the wastewater treatment plant?
Yeah, correct. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Any other staff reports?
Nothing from me today.
Thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Well, then we'll move to director's reports. Who would like to go first? Okay, Director Ringen.
So long as everybody's reluctant, I'll get the ball rolling. What a busy month this has been and going to be. Unbelievable. Any rate, 6/9, I attended and participated in the Tuolumne County Resource Committee meeting. It was really interesting. They're pursuing forest restoration type projects and grants and things like that. At any rate, they continue to move forward in a very positive way there, and working with YSS and other groups. On 6/10, attended the TUD HR External Relations Committee meeting as a stone. That was very interesting meeting, lots of progress. 6/15, participated in the T-Stand IRWM Outreach Subcommittee meeting. We're moving forward at really a pretty good speed, coming up with promotional material that we'll be able to hand out to let not only the public know exactly what we're doing, but also it'll help us in trying to find grant monies and that sort of thing. 6/16, participated in the joint T-Stand, IRWM, JPA, and WAC, Water Advisory Committee meeting. That was real interesting. We're coming down the home stretch on a stormwater project that will put a bunch of information that anybody can have access to on the T-Stand Irwin website. I'll give everybody a link if they're interested once it's up and running. There's a lot of work going into this. So anyway, once again, this is about using the water we have here in the county, not letting it get away from us, and using it to a good purpose, like the Twain Harte CSD stormwater project, which is absolutely commendable in my opinion. So at any rate, that's it for me.
Thank
We
you.
have Director Murphy.
Yeah. So Abby already talked about a lot of the stuff that we talked about in the HR meeting, but there's one more piece that's very exciting, which is the video series that we've been talking about. And so I believe, and Abby, you can fill in the pieces on this one. We had a kind of a meeting about which video we're starting with, which is that "Where Does Your Water Come From" video. And Abby and Lisa Westbrook have been putting in a ton of work, and they're meeting with Cassandra, who is a student at Columbia College, who we are contracting with for $500 per video. And so we've really fleshed out a lot of what we're looking for in that video, and they were relaying that information to Cassandra. And hopefully, have you already had that meeting, Abby, or is that coming up?
I believe that meeting is this week. I can't remember which day. We have a lot of meetings, but yes, that's coming up. And she's been provided the questionnaire that we filled out, and so she's on board, and we're going to follow up just with a Zoom meeting with her so that she's crystal clear on how to get started.
Awesome. And yeah, and that video series is going to provide education to our community about different aspects of the watershed and water district as we go, starting out with the "Where does our water come from" and kind of how does it get to us. So pretty exciting. I think that's a great partnership, or not partnership, but a great way to do this. And really appreciate Abby and Lisa Westbrook's work on making this happen. So thank you so much.
David or Jeff, anything to report?
I have no reports at this time. Other than external observation at the Human Resources Committee. But, thank you.
Yeah, same for me. I attended that Human Resources Committee as well, but that's it. Thank you.
Okay. And Director Murphy and Abby, you guys covered that really well. And I just want to give a shout out to my son Brett Malley for handing us that little form. I thought that was really handy and a good centering exercise to kind of get our heads around what we were looking for. So that was a nice little windfall there. I have a Mountain Counties board meeting coming up, and we are going to seriously be discussing what legislators or what panels or what committees we want to have for our first live luncheon, if you will. So stay tuned for that. That's what we're going to be working on this Friday in person. And other than that, I don't have anything else to report. Anybody else have anything to say? All right, then we will adjourn today's meeting at 12:04. And
Thank you,
thanks again,
everybody.
everybody, for
Thank you.
great staff reports. Thank you.
Great meeting. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
Everyone have a
everyone.
great afternoon.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.